In this video, I will show you an end-to-end solution on how to query AWS S3 data in Amazon Athena with necessary permissions and configuration. If you're new to cloud computing on AWS and you're wondering where to start from, this video is for you. Without much talking, let's get started. Now, before we dive into the solution, let's explore the sample dataset we're going to be using for this demonstration. In this dataset, I've got this columns of data that span across order ID to sales columns, and this file is named AWS Sales 2023.csv, and I'm going to show you the 2024 2025 later on. So once this has been resolved, I'm going to come to my browser. In this console, we're going to go ahead and create a bucket. So just go ahead and click on create bucket, and then it's going to be a general purpose bucket, and you need to provide a globally unique name for your bucket, and then go ahead and click on create bucket at the bottom, and your bucket is now going to be created. In my case, I'm going to use my general purpose bucket already created, which is named Cornerstone Solutions 01, and I'm going to click on that. In this bucket, I've got no folder or files. So I'm going to click on create folder because it's a good idea to always create a folder in order to organize your files. Let's call this one sales data, and I'm going to come to the bottom and click on create folder, and it's going to be created in a matter of seconds. And I can see the path at the top here. We have the cornerstone, the name of the bucket, and then we are currently in the sales data folder we just created. Nice and easy. Now we can go ahead and upload our files. It could be CSV, it could be Parquet or JSON or Avery or whatever that you're working with. But in our case, we're going to be using the comma separated value. So click on this upload, and I can see the option to add files. You can also upload a folder that contains files. But in our case, let's just add a single file, and I'm going to double click on the AWS Sales 2023.csv, and it's going to be provisioned here. And I can go to the bottom and click on upload file, and it's going to be uploaded into the sales data folder we just created, and we can see AWS Sales 2023.csv. Now I'm going to go ahead and launch the access and identity management service and create a role and grant the necessary permissions in order to be able to authenticate and access the data resident in our S3 bucket from the Glue service. So I'm going to right click and duplicate this tab, and in the search menu, I'm going to search for the IAM, the access and identity management. Click on that, and then on the left hand side, I'm going to say the access management, which contains creating user groups, users, roles, policies, and so on and so forth. I'm going to click on roles, and we've got this default roles. So I'm going to click on create role at the top right hand corner, and I can choose the trusted entity to use this role. So I'm going to use the default AWS service, which include EC2, Lambda, and other to perform actions in this account. And I'm going to choose the service. So I want to choose the Glue service. And at the bottom, I can see use case. Glue allows Glue to call AWS services on your behalf. This is correct. I'm going to click on next, and we can choose the permissions policy that we want to attach to the role we're just going to create. Now, we need the Amazon S3 full access. So I'm going to set for S3 full access, and I can see that here. And I'm going to clear this. And then we also need the AWS Glue console full access. So I'm going to set for Glue console full access. Now, it's really needed in order for the AWS Glue to be able to access and authenticate to our S3 bucket. So once this is selected, I'm going to click on next. So I can see the option to provide a name for this role. Let's call this one my role, and I can give a description if I choose, and I can see the trusted entity in a JSON key value piece, and I can add other permissions, but this is fine for this demonstration. And we can see the two permissions: Amazon S3 full access, AWS Glue console full access, and these are AWS managed roles or permissions. And I'm going to click on create role. We can add tags if we choose for data governance, but that's not needed. So we can see our role is now created. Nice and easy. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this tab, and we want to launch the AWS Glue service. So I'm going to come here and search for AWS Glue, and I can click on that. Now, AWS Glue Service is basically a fully managed serverless data integration service that simplifies the process of discovering, preparing, transforming, and loading data for analytics, machine learning, and application development. So I'm going to be covering AWS Glue Service in detail in subsequent videos, but for now, let's just focus on what is really needed. So I'm going to come here. We can see we have this ETL jobs and so on and so forth. We're going to cover all of this, but let's cover the data catalog at the bottom, and then I'm going to create a database. Basically, a database is a logical container within the AWS Glue Data Catalog that organizes and stores metadata tables for our data sources, which enable efficient data discovery and management. So I'm going to click on databases, and I can see I've got no databases. So I'm going to click on add database, and let's call this on my DB Glue. You can use whatever name you like, and let's call this on demo DB. And for the database settings, this is optional, and I'm going to go down to the bottom and click on create database. And this database is now created. Now I'm going to click on that, and then we can see the database property, the name, description, location if there is any, and then the date it was created. Now I'm going to go ahead and add tables using Crawler. So let's understand what is tables and Crawler. Basically, a database table is a metadata definition within the AWS Glue Data Catalog that describes the structure, location, format of the data set, column names, and data types, which enable efficient querying and transformation across the AWS Analytics service. Now that we understood the meaning of the two concepts, I'm going to proceed to add tables using Crawler. And then we can give the name for the crawler. Let's call this one my crawler. You can use whatever name you like. And then for the description, let's give demo. And then I'm going to click on next. So we need to choose our data sources and if we have any classifiers that are associated with the data source. In our case, we just want to add data source. So I can add data source from here. I can also click on the same add data source from here. And I'm going to see this add data source page. So we've got a bunch of data sources which include S3, Java, database connectivity, DynamoDB, DocumentDB, including things such as Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle Database, PostgreSQL, Redshift, and so on and so forth. In our case, we're going to focus on the S3, and then we need to choose the location of our S3 path. Click on this browse, and then I'm going to choose the name of the container, which is Cornerstone Solutions, and then I've got this sales data. So I'm going to click on this because my file is resident in this folder, and I'm going to click on select. And we're going to say this is required. Just click out, and that's going to take care of the problem. Now we have this location of S3 data. Usually you're going to pick location within your account, but this also allows you to pick from a different account. But in our case, we're going to focus on in this account. And then for the subsequent crawler runs, we're going to maintain this crawl all subfolder, which is the default. So I'm going to click on add an S3 data source. And this is now added, as we can see from here. And then we can see the parameter, which is recrawl all, and the type of the data source is S3, and then we can choose a custom classifier, but I'm going to forget about this and click on next. And then we want to configure security settings. So don't forget we've created a role, which is my role. So I'm going to click on this drop down, and I can see my role now available for me. So this is really needed in order to be able to authenticate and access the data in S3 using the AWS Glue. So once this is sorted, I'm going to come down to the bottom and click on next. And then I'm going to choose the output configuration, that is the target database. So I'm going to choose the MyDB Glue database we created. And then for the table name prefix, we can forget about this because these are optional. And very importantly, we want to come to the crawler schedule. So this is usually on demand by frequency because you don't want to actually keep on running the crawler when it is not needed. So you can also choose some other options such as hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, based on how often you get data. But in our case, we're going to use the default on-demand frequency, and I'm going to click on next. And then we can see the whole thing. We have the name of the crawler, description, we can see the data source, we can also see the configure, security, and settings, and then we can see the set output and scheduling. So this is just going to be on demand based on the schedule frequency we choose. And then I'm going to click on create crawler. And the following crawler is now created. So I'm going to click on run crawler, and there we go. Crawler successfully starting, and then we can come down to the bottom and click on this refresh, and we can see this is now provisioned, and we can see this actually now running as a status. Now, depending on the volume of your data set, this might take a while, but in my case, I've got few rows of data, so this shouldn't take more than 55 seconds. So I'm going to click on this to refresh. So this is currently 33 seconds. All right, so this is now completed. Absolutely cool. Now I'm going to come to the databases, and I can see database, and when I go to the tables and just click on this refresh, there we go, we have the sales data. So this is the data of our data. So I'm going to click on sales data, and I can see the table details. And when I go down to the bottom, we're going to see the list of our columns. So this has been crawled, and we can see the metadata of our original data that lives in the S3 bucket. Nice and easy. Now we can go ahead and launch the Amazon Athena service. So I'm going to right click and duplicate this tab. And in the search menu, I'm going to search for Athena, which is a serverless interactive analytics service. So just launch that. And we're going to see we have the AWS Data Catalog as the data source. This is basically the centralized metadata repository that stores table definitions, job metadata, and other data-related information. And then when I come to the database, I can see my DB Glue has been selected automatically, and we can see sales data as table. So I'm just going to come here and let's query the table. So I'm going to press Ctrl Enter. And when I go to the bottom, amazing. So we have our data, the order ID, order date, month, and so on and so forth. Now, don't forget, we just have the 2023 data loaded in the folder of our S3 bucket. Nice and easy. Now, what happens if I load 2024? So let's see how it works. I'm going to come here and let's close this. And I want to upload the sales 2024. And I'm going to tell you what to do in order to get that data also visible in the Athena. So I'm going to add files, and I'm going to double click on the 2024 and go down to the bottom and click on upload. Now, this is not going to be visible when I run this because the crawler is actually set to run on demand. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to come to the crawlers, and I can see my crawler. So click on that. So I'm going to click on run crawler. So that's the benefit of scheduling this. But in our case, we're not scheduling. So I'm just going to do this manually. So click on run crawler. I'm just going to start running the game. And I'm going to just come to the bottom. So this is the one we initially executed, which completed. And we can see for the table changes, we've got one table change and we have 0 partition change. So let's just wait for this to finish. And once this is done, then we can come here and then query the data again. And we're going to see the 2024 data also included. So I'm going to come here quickly, click on this refresh. Okay, this is 36 seconds. So let me just wait for some couple of moments. Amazing. So this completed in an unusual time, just 1 minute, 6 seconds, no problem. So once this has been done, I'm going to come here, and the next time I query this again, Control Enter, and we can see we have the data for the 2024, and when I go to the bottom, we can say 2023. So this is how we can query S3 data using the Amazon Athena. I trust you enjoyed this video. If you do, please like, comment, and follow me for more videos. Thank you for watching. Bye for now. Cheers.